We're back, guys. We're back with week one of the NFL season kicking off this Thursday night with the Lions and Chiefs. And man, I'm so excited to be talking NFL again, to be making DFS content again. I know it's been a while since I've made a DFS video on this channel. It's been at least I want to say 4 or 5 months. But obviously with the NFL season getting here, starting this week, DFS content is going to start ramping back up. We're going to continue to post content for prize picks and for sleeper as well for the pick'em sites. We'll talk about more about those in a second, but for this video, guys, we're going to talk through the showdown slate for Thursday Night Football on DraftKings. Huge contest, to no surprise, DraftKings continues to run out huge contests for the showdown slates. We got 2.5 million in total prizes, 1 million to first for Thursday Night Football. This should be a fun game between the Chiefs and the Lions, and I'm just excited to be talking football and to be talking DFS again. So if you guys are new here, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button as well. We're going to be uploading a lot of NFL content throughout the week. Right now I plan on making 6 NFL videos a week. We're going to be making videos for the showdown slate, so for Thursday Night Football, for Monday Night Football. We're going to be making prize picks videos, so player prop videos for Thursday Night Football, for Monday Night Football. So that's 4 videos right there. And then we're going to be doing DFS videos for the main slate, and then a player prop video for the main slate as well. So 6 videos a week I plan on uploading to this channel, maybe more as the season progresses if we find even new content to make. But you guys definitely want to make sure to hit that subscribe button if you are new here. Also, I do want to give a shout out to Sleeper. We are now partnered up with Sleeper. If you guys have never heard of Sleeper, they are a pick'em site. So it's a newer site. It's something that the DFS industry, a part of the DFS industry that has really grown. I'm a kind of an OG when it comes to DFS. I've been playing DFS for probably 7-8 years now. Been making DFS content for 5-6 years now. But these pick'em apps like Sleeper and Prospects and Underdog, all these sites, they're really growing, and we partner up with Sleeper. You guys can actually join Sleeper, download their app either on the App Store or on the Google Play Store. And when you sign up with promo code NOAH, if you do look at the bottom of the screen, when you sign up for Sleeper with my promo code, you will get your first deposit matched up to $100. So be sure to go check out Sleeper if you guys have not yet. Take a look at their site, see what they have to offer. On Sleeper, it is really simple. You're just picking over or under on the player projections that they have listed. They have all kind of props for NFL, touchdowns, passing yards, receiving yards, rushing yards, receptions, all that stuff. And again, you're just picking more or less. You have to make up to 2 picks, but you can make up to an 8-pick entry on Sleeper, and you can win up to 100x your money on Sleeper. Sleeper offers some really, really high payouts. So if you're one of those people that really likes to chase those high payouts, I definitely recommend giving Sleeper a try. And again, guys, if you're not on Sleeper yet, download their app, sign up, use that promo code NOAH, and get your first deposit matched up to $100. But let's talk through it, man. Let's talk through the Week 1 Thursday Night Football showdown slate. We're going to start off at the top of the player pool, and we're just going to kind of work our way down and talk about really all the playable options for this slate. So at the top, we got Patrick Mahomes. We'll just start off with the quarterbacks first. So we got Patrick Mahomes as the most expensive player on the slate, $12,200, and then we got Jared Goff at $9,400. I think both quarterbacks in this game are going to project very well. This is a game with a very high total. I'm pretty sure the total sits at 54 right now. This is a game that is expected to have a lot of points, a lot of points scored. Mahomes at $12,200 is obviously a great play here. He projects the highest player on the slate by a pretty good margin. We know what Mahomes can bring to the table in terms of fantasy upside. Even though he doesn't have a ton of great offensive weapons in Kansas City anymore, they don't have Tyreek Hill anymore, but this is still a guy that can go out there and throw for 300-plus yards any week. He can throw for multiple touchdowns. He offers rushing upside as well. He's just he's one of the best fantasy quarterbacks. You guys know that. I don't really have to tell you that. I think Mahomes is a great play here. If you're playing cash games, he's pretty much a must in cash games. I think you probably want to try and fit him in the captain spot in cash games as well. And even in GPPs, even though he's going to be super, super popular, it's really hard to get away from Mahomes here. I would be fine playing Mahomes in captain, even in GPPs, but I would definitely want to be pairing, multiple receivers with Mahomes, because on the chance that Mahomes winds up being the winning captain, if he's the guy that you need in the captain spot, that probably means that he is throwing for 3 or 4 touchdowns, maybe more than that. And if he's doing that, you're going to need some of his receivers. So just kind of make sure you play around with those rules. If you're one of those people that builds a lot of GPP lineups, I would definitely recommend pairing multiple receivers with a quarterback at captain, unless it's like a Lamar Jackson or a Jalen Hurts, one of those guys that can do it all with their legs. Obviously Mahomes has rushing upside, but it's hard for him to break a slate, without some of his receivers going off as well. So Mahomes looks great here. I think Jared Goff looks great as well. Jared Goff obviously doesn't offer really much rushing upside, but he's going to throw a ton. This Lions offense, they're going to be a pretty pass-heavy offense this season. And this is a spot as road underdogs where you would expect the Lions to be playing from behind. So I think we can expect a lot of dropbacks here for Jared Goff, probably 35, 40 pass attempts. Kansas City did allow a lot of fantasy points to quarterbacks last season. I think a large majority of that is kind of due to just teams having to play from behind against Kansas City, so they're just having to throw a ton. But last season, Kansas City did allow the fourth most Draftkings points to quarterbacks. The Lions, on the other hand, allow the most fantasy points per game to quarterbacks, so obviously it's a great spot for Mahomes. I think it's a great spot for Jared Goff as well. I think he looks like a really solid play here. In cash games, I would definitely roster both quarterbacks on this slate, and in tournaments, I think both quarterbacks still look very strong as well. Now, looking at some of the other top options, you got Travis Kelce at 12K. It's not really much to say about Travis Kelce. We know what he's going to do. We know the volume's going to be there. The opportunity's going to be there. His competition for targets is very minimal in Kansas City. Kansas City just, without Tyreek Hill, they just don't have the same, target monster, that could challenge Kelce for targets. You might see some targets for MVS and Kadarius Toney and maybe Jerick McKinnon out of the backfield, but these guys are not going to demand the volume that someone like Tyreek Hill did. So we can expect just massive volume here for Travis Kelce. 8, 9, 10 targets is something he's probably going to see on a weekly basis. He's very likely to score a touchdown. I mean, he scored, 16 touchdowns last year. Anytime they get into the red zone, it seems like Kelce's always kind of the first look for Mahomes. At 12K, he's obviously tough to get to, and, paying up for all these guys at the top is going to be tough to do. But clearly, Kelce's one of the top plays on the slate. I still think Mahomes projects better overall, but in tournaments, I would have no issue going with like a Kelce at captain lineup, just because we know that Kelce's one of these guys that can, score 2, 3 touchdowns. He has that slate-breaking upside. Really like Travis Kelce here. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown. I mean, it's hard to say anything negative about Amon-Ra St. Brown, and kind of when it comes to these showdown slates, when you look at like these star players, like, obviously the top projected players, Mahomes, Kelce, Amon-Ra, Goff, you really can't say anything negative about these guys. They all are going to project very well. They're all going to be, very highly owned. It's really hard to get away from them. What really, it comes down to on these showdown slates is being able to roster the right value plays, the cheap guys that do well. Amon-Ra, though, projects very well here in what should be a pass-heavy game script for the Lions. And his competition for targets is pretty minimal in Detroit now. Jameson Williams is still injured. This is a spot where I think Amon-Ra is going to just see a ton of volume, going to play a ton of snaps. He was a great fantasy wide receiver last season. He really turned it on kind of in the middle part of the season, and obviously to finish the season, he was amazing. The volume's going to be there. It's a good matchup. Kansas City secondary is not really one to fear. It's a pass-heavy game script for the Lions. I think Amon-Ra at 10,200 looks like a really strong play as well. And honestly, I think in cash games, he probably projects as a better play than Kelce. I think Kelce and Brown project, for points wise, they project around for the same amount of fantasy points. So getting that, $1,800 discount probably makes Amon-Ra the better play in cash games straight up. But for tournaments, Kelce and Amon-Ra both look like really, really strong options here. And if you're playing Amon-Ra at your captain spot, I highly recommend putting Jared Goff in those lineups. If you're playing Kelce in your captain spot, highly recommend putting Mahomes in those lineups. Anytime you have a pass catcher in the captain spot, you almost always want to have his quarterback with him. Now let's take a look at some of the other options on the slate in kind of the mid-range, and this is where it starts to get interesting. So we've got the two Detroit running backs, Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. David Montgomery is going to kind of fill in that Jamal Williams role, kind of get the early down work, probably the goal line work as well. How much usage will David Montgomery get in the passing game is kind of to be determined. When he was on the Bears, he was a guy that typically would get like 3 to 4 targets a game, and he's typically been a guy that can do damage in the passing game. So I don't know if David Montgomery is just going to be like a zero in the passing game like Jamal Williams kind of was. I mean, Jamal Williams rarely got any targets when he was with the Lions. I don't know if that'll be the case with David Montgomery at 6,600 as a guy that's probably going to get like 12 to 15 carries and maybe 2 to 3 targets. I think David Montgomery looks like a pretty solid play here. I would rather go to him over Jahmyr Gibbs. I know there's a lot of hype around Jahmyr Gibbs, and he's probably going to see a lot of usage in the passing game, but I do still expect it to be kind of a 50-50 split between him and Montgomery. Obviously, Montgomery getting a lot of the rushing work, whereas Gibbs will probably get a lot of the passing work. When you're talking about DraftKings scoring, full PPR, Obviously, running backs that get a lot of work in the passing game are very valuable to roster on DraftKings because of the full PPR. But I think Gibbs, at this $8,200 salary, he's not going to project very well for this salary just because, it is going to be kind of an even split between him and Montgomery, I would assume. If anything, it might be like a 60-40 split favoring Montgomery. I think Gibbs is more of a contrarian play, whereas Montgomery projects a little bit better and is probably like the safer cash game play. Both these guys are rosterable in tournaments. I don't think I would roster them together in tournaments. I think in order for them to both make the winning lineup on this slate, you would need kind of a lot to go right. You would probably need a couple goal line rushing touchdowns for Montgomery, and then you'd probably need like 6 or 7 receptions for Jahmyr Gibbs. And the chances of that happening, I think, are fairly slim here. So I don't know if I would be rostering both running backs together, but they are both playable here. I do lean Montgomery, though, if I'm just choosing between one of the two Detroit running backs. And then for Kansas City, we're probably going to see a 3-man committee at running back for Kansas City with Isaiah Pacheco kind of getting the early down work. Clyde Edwards-Helaire probably mixing in for a little bit of the early down work as well. And then Jerick McKinnon getting a lot of the pass game usage, the third down work. We'll talk about Pacheco first. So Pacheco was really good last season, especially towards the end of the year and in the playoffs. Was a guy that he's a really hard, aggressive runner. He's a guy that doesn't get a ton of usage in the passing game. So for DraftKings scoring, he's never a guy that projects very well on DraftKings, just because he's not going to get a ton of targets. But he will get 12, 13, 14 carries. In a scenario where the Chiefs get a big lead in this game, there's definitely a chance you see even more volume on the ground for Pacheco. This is a spot where obviously Kansas City is favored by nearly 7. They're nearly a touchdown favorite. So you do expect Kansas City to probably be playing with a lead in this game. That will favor Pacheco. But because of Pacheco's inability to get usage in the passing game, he almost has to score a touchdown to be valuable at his salary, or he's going to have to rush for like 100+ yards. At 6,800, I think Pacheco's playable here, but he's not my favorite option on this slate by any means. Between like him or Montgomery, I think that's really close. I think both guys project for similar volume. Both guys probably project for similar fantasy points as well. I think I'd lean slightly to Montgomery there, but Pacheco's fine. Not my favorite play by any means though. You got Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who is really cheap, 3,600. Edwards-Helaire did not play much at all last season after obviously starting off the season really well. He just kind of lost his job, honestly, last season. I do expect Edwards-Helaire to be more involved this season, but I don't expect him to have like a lead role or anything. My best guess is you probably see like 6 to 8 touches for Edwards-Helaire, maybe 4 to 5 carries, maybe 3-4 targets. Edwards-Helaire has shown upside, but I just don't know if the volume's going to be there for him to be a guy that I really want to roster on this slate. Now, he is pretty cheap, 3,600, but other than that, I think Edwards-Helaire is just kind of like a dart throw here. And then lastly, you have Jerick McKinnon at 5,600. We saw Jerick McKinnon be very, very efficient with his touches last season. There was games where he would only get like 6 or 7 touches, but he would still score like 15 DraftKings points. He definitely ran hot on touchdowns last season. Obviously, there's regression there. He's not going to score a touchdown every single game. But McKinnon does get a lot of usage in the passing game, and that is very valuable on DraftKings with the full PPR scoring. At 5,600, though, he's not priced at a price point where I think he's a guy I really want to be heavily jamming into my lineup. So the Kansas City running back situation is not one that I'm super in love with, but if I had to roster one of the KC running backs here, I think Pacheco is probably my favorite. It's just a tough situation to predict. They're going to have 3 active running backs. They're going to involve 3 running backs. I think it's kind of it could be like a hot hand situation. It could be kind of a game script situation. But again, if I had to roster one of the KC RBs, I'd probably look at Pacheco first. Now for the rest of we'll talk about the KC wide receivers. So you got Kadarius Toney, who's the most expensive KC wide receiver, kind of surprisingly. Toney did not play much at all in the preseason, I'm pretty sure. I think he didn't play at all in the preseason, this past preseason. But he's listed as available. He's good to go for this week 1 game. Obviously, Toney is a very injury-prone player. We see him get injured a lot. He was injured a lot last season. He was used kind of like as a gadget guy last season with the Chiefs. He didn't play like a ton of snaps, but usually when he was on the field, he was getting targeted some. They can use him like end arounds and stuff like that. He's obviously playing with a great quarterback and a great offense that you expect to put up a lot of points. But the real question for Toney is just how much playing time is he going to get here? Is he going to play 70, 80% of the snaps? I think that's pretty unlikely. So with his price tag being at $7K and with the uncertainty regarding his health and just how much playing time he's going to get, I'm not super interested in Toney here. He's just kind of another GBP dart throw. I do expect his ownership to be fairly low on this Showdown slate, so there's always a chance you could roster him in GBPs and this be the game he pops off. But at 7K, not a ton of interest in Kadarius Toney. I'm looking at these cheaper Kansas City wide receivers. You got Marquez Valdes-Scantling at 5,400. I do expect Valdes-Scantling to probably lead this team in snaps played when it comes to the wide receiver position. Does that mean he's going to score a lot of fantasy points every week? Obviously, not. Just because he's on the field doesn't mean he's guaranteed to score fantasy points. But in order to score fantasy points, you have to be on the field. And I do expect MVS to play a good amount of snaps. Last year, he was a guy that consistently played like 75-80% of the snaps on a weekly basis. He's with a great quarterback and a great offense for a team that's expected to put up a lot of points here. At 5,400, I think MVS looks like a pretty decent value play on this slate. Even if he only gets like 6 or 7 targets, there's a good chance that, a couple of those targets are deep downfield shots. And on the off chance that he connects on one of those, deep downfield shots, that could be all that it takes. A little 50, 60-yard bomb for a touchdown. That's what, 16, or not 16, but like 12 DraftKings points, 13 DraftKings points. You get 13 DraftKings points from MVS at 5,400, you're probably going to be in pretty good shape. So I do like MVS quite a bit for value. And then I think Sky Moore looks like a pretty good value play as well. Sky Moore was not really involved a ton last season, but I think that's going to change this season. They just, they don't have Juju Smith-Schuster anymore, so he kind of moved up. Sky Moore got to move up in the depth chart, and there's a chance he could, in terms of snaps played, he could be the number 2 wide receiver for this Kansas City team behind, MVS. He could even lead the team in snaps played for all we know. The Chiefs are going to have a lot of active wide receivers. I'd assume that they have a lot of guys they can rotate in and out. But I do expect Sky Moore's playing time to be pretty consistent here and pretty consistent this season. So at 4,800 as a value option, I definitely like Sky Moore on this slate. And then the rest of the Kansas City wide receivers, this is where you just kind of start throwing darts. You got Rashee Rice, rookie, at 4,600. He might operate as like the wide receiver 4/wide receiver 5. At 4,600, I think he's more of a dart throw at that salary. If I was going to take a shot on like a KC cheap receiver, I'd probably look to like a Richie James or a Justin Ross. Ross out of Clemson, obviously, I don't think he wasn't healthy last season, but he's finally healthy this season and able to play. He's only $1,000, super cheap guy. He did make the roster. I expect he'll be active for this game, but make sure, I forgot to say this, make sure you're checking for inactives 90 minutes before the game starts. Teams will release their inactives, so make sure you're keeping an eye on that. But I do expect Justin Ross to be active for this game. As a dart throw at 1K, he's playable. And then if you want to take a shot on a guy like Richie James coming over from the Giants, we saw when he was on the Giants, when he got playing time, he was able to demand targets and carry kind of a heavy workload. Is he going to be involved in this Chiefs offense as much as he was on the Giants? Probably not. But at 2K as a dart throw, I think Richie James is fine. Of all the dart throws, like Richie James, Rashee Rice, Justin Ross, I think James is probably my favorite of those 3. But again, there's not a ton of conviction there. I think you're kind of just throwing darts with the rest of these KC guys. Again, I think KC, they're going to have probably 6 wide receivers active for this game, which makes it really tough to kind of tell who's going to get the targets. But I think for playing time wise, at least, we can expect plenty of playing time for MVS and Sky Moore, making them probably the safest of all the KC wide receivers. Now, looking at Detroit's wide receiver situation, we obviously talked about Amon-Ra, how he's going to demand a ton of volume. The snaps are obviously going to be there as well. The rest of the Detroit wide receivers, though, this is where it gets a little bit tricky. So you got Marvin Jones coming back to Detroit. He's 6,200. Obviously, at this point in his career, the guy's like, 33 years old now, 32 years old. He doesn't have the same fantasy upside that he really used to have. He's obviously not the same player that he used to be, but he will be playing in a pass-heavy offense. He probably will be playing a good amount of snaps. He's not, he's not cheap by any means. 6,200 is definitely a lot to pay for Marvin Jones here. He is playable though, because I think he will be on the field enough to at least be a guy that could have a good game, but definitely not my favorite option by any means. If I was going to take a shot on a Detroit wide receiver, I would look to one of these cheaper guys. You got Khalif Raymond, super cheap. You got Josh Reynolds, super cheap. Both these guys are going to get decent playing time. They're going to operate as kind of the wide receiver 3/4. Josh Reynolds is 2,800. Josh Reynolds has not really shown a ton of fantasy upside when he's even been able to get on the field, but the playing time is going to be there. The price tag is very low. Last season with the Lions, Josh Reynolds consistently played I want to say he played 50-60% of the snaps most weeks. Yeah, when he was healthy last season, he was consistently playing 50-60% of the snaps. So the playing time is going to be there at 2,800. I think Josh Reynolds is in play for value. And then if we're looking for a really cheap option, I definitely like Khalif Raymond here at $800. He projects pretty well for this salary. He's super cheap. He allows you to pay up for a lot of the guys at the top. And I expect Khalif Raymond to get a good amount of playing time. I mean, if you look at the snaps played last season, especially on the games they didn't have DJ Shark, so weeks 4 through 10 last season for the Lions when DJ Shark was unavailable. Obviously, DJ Shark's no longer on the team. In those games, Khalif Raymond was playing like 80 to 90% of the snaps. Now, did that result in a ton of fantasy points? I don't really remember, honestly. But for $800, if we're going to get a guy that's going to play maybe 50, 60% of the snaps as like a wide receiver 3/4, this is a price tag that he can easily pay off. I mean, it doesn't take much for a guy to pay off an $800 salary. And if Travis Kelce, if Patrick Mahomes, if Amon-Ra St. Brown, if Jared Goff, if all those guys do well at the top, if they all put up a lot of fantasy points, well, you're going to need someone cheap in your lineup to kind of round that lineup out. And, Khalif Raymond could be that cheap guy that makes all that work. So for $800, I think Khalif Raymond looks like a really good value here. He is someone that I'm definitely interested in on this slate. And then besides that, I think we kind of talked about, most of the guys on this slate. We missed a few guys, like Noah Gray and Justin Watson, but these are just like touchdown or bust plays. There's not a ton of interest for me in those guys. We didn't talk about the kickers or the defenses. In a game like this that's expected to have a lot of points scored, I don't think the defenses look super great. KC's defense is only 3,800. They are at home in Arrowhead where it's going to be loud. Maybe you could take a shot on KC's defense, but I typically don't play the defenses a ton in Showdown. I think defense is a very tough position to predict. I mean, a defense could put up -2 any week, and a defense could put up 20 points any week. It's just a tough position to really nail down. I don't think on this slate the defenses look that great. I think kickers are always fine to roster. Most nights you're going to get like at least 6 to 10 DraftKings points from a kicker, and sometimes in high-scoring games you could see the kickers put up 12, 13, 15 DraftKings points. In a game like this with a 54 total, this could definitely be a spot where the kickers do put up double-digit DK points. So as like a value option, obviously the ceiling on kickers is not super high, but the floor is pretty safe. For 4,400, I think Harrison Butker looks fine. For I think it's I can't remember who's going to be the kicker for Detroit. I think it's going to be Patterson, if I remember correctly. Obviously, yeah, it looks like he did earn the starting role. So Patterson should be the starting kicker for Detroit. Obviously you could play him for value as well. Obviously, I think Butker would probably project better though, just because he's playing for the team with the higher total, and he's playing for the team that's expected to put up more points. But the kickers for value, they make sense here. But that's really it. I think we kind of talked about all the playable options on this Showdown slate. We might have skipped over a few guys, but the guys that we skipped over, weren't super important to talk about. Those guys are probably just like touchdown or bust plays. So that's kind of it for this Showdown slate, guys. That's kind of a quick breakdown of the player pool, what I'm liking for this Thursday night game. I'm so excited, man, for Thursday night just to be watching football again, to be sweating NFL. We're going to be uploading a ton of NFL content throughout the week, guys, so make sure you hit that subscribe button if you have not yet. We'll be making DFS videos, prospects videos, those for Pick'em apps. We are now partnered up with Sleeper, guys. Again, if you're not signed up for Sleeper yet, get signed up over there. Use that promo code NOAH. You'll get your first deposit matched up to $100 when you sign up for Sleeper with my promo code. You can either download their app on the App Store or on the Google Play Store, whether you have an Android or an iPhone, or you can just click the link down in the description. You click that link, it'll take you straight to the Sleeper app. Make your first deposit, use that code NOAH, and you'll get your first deposit doubled up to $100. So be sure to check out Sleeper if you guys have not yet. But that's all that I got for tonight's Showdown slate, or for Thursday night Showdown slate, guys. Appreciate you watching the video. Appreciate you guys supporting the content. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you're excited for all the NFL content I'm going to be putting out this season. Again, guys, hit that subscribe button if you have not yet. Hit that like button as well, and we'll see you guys in the next video. Best of luck this Thursday night. Peace.